Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Conservationists Assembled podcast, headquarters for the world's mightiest conservation heroes. Each week, podcast hosts an animal advocate or environment enthusiast to discuss all things surrounding a particular species or habitat. I am your host, Johnny Bloxham, and I suppose you could say that this episode is fit for a king. Please welcome to the podcast as we discuss all things African lion, James Welch. James, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Johnny, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Very excited to talk with you today, naturally, about one of probably the most recognised species on the planet. We are discussing all things African lion.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'd agree that I'd say they're the most iconic animal, around.
Certainly, and yeah, very well represented in pop culture. So can you please tell us a little bit about African lions, James?
So lions have been around for thousands and thousands of years, close to millennia. Africa is where it started. That's where they evolved from, Eastern Africa, and and actually that's probably their last stronghold as well. So they are second largest cat, second only really to the Yellow tiger, and they were once one of the most widespread large land mammals on the entire planet, stretching right into Europe and into Asia, Russia, and into North America. And so they're iconic, and actually they were our predecessors almost.
Fantastic. And kind of how many, so you say that Africa's really their last stronghold and obviously gone into description of their previous historic range. So how many African lions are we looking at left in the wild, and what is their status?
You're looking about 23,000 throughout the whole of the African continent, and then they are classed as vulnerable. The lion in West Africa is classed as critically endangered, and then the Asiatic subspecies, well, they're not subspecies anymore, but they're classed as endangered. So vulnerable overall, with a couple of little subpopulations flagged up really.
Interesting. So you mentioned this West African population. Are they now heading into subspecies kind of recognition, or are they still classified as a regular African lion? But they're just locked by land kind of thing.
So what has happened recently? It's quite confusing. If you Google it, you get different results. But the IUCN Cat Classification Task Force have now split lions completely in half. So instead of having Asiatic separately, it's now been proposed, it's now been approved that it's got northern and southern, with the Great Rift Valley in the middle. So southern lions is kind of like Kenya downwards, and then the west, central, northern, and Asiatic is the northern lion. So recent genetic testing has shown that lions in Western Africa are more closely related to Asiatic lions than they are at lions from Eastern and Southern Africa.
Oh, wow.
They've used that as the basis and have completely rewritten the way that we see the lion population. But it shows how widespread they were, how widespread they were, and how recently widespread as well.
So what does that then mean for breeding in zoos? Do we have to kind of take a step back now and reassess what we're going to do with them?
I think it's been recognised that the Asiatic breeding program can continue in its own right, because they know where those lions are from. They are from, so the Asiatics are now classed as a subpopulation now, as a subspecies. So everything for them is still completely relevant. But how we view Africans, I think that might change over time. The new lions that Whipsnade have brought in, for example, they're Barbary stubbook lions. But now I think the Barbary stubbook is now they're using the word North African more now. So obviously, they hope they have a decent origin of where those lions came from the menageries in Morocco. So they hope that they're from Northern Africa. So I think things will stay fairly similar. I think from an education point of view, I think that's where things might change a bit quicker.
Sure. At least there's not a detriment to the gene pool as far as
Exactly.
we're aware then.
Exactly. If anything, it's made things slightly simpler, really.
Right.
Because there was once talk of about 9 different subspecies, which was
well, at
a
least
bit
yeah,
too
that'll hopefully
complicated,
help.
really.
Definitely. So then we are talking about trying to create that marriage between in situ and ex situ conservation projects. Are there any in situ conservation programs specifically for lions then that exist and that zoos partner up with?
So there are quite a few conservation projects that work out there that the zoos have supported for quite a long time. Lion Guardians is quite a well-known one. It was like the first organisation that actively involved and employed Maasai warriors. They created what they call the Lion Guardians model, which is now been adapted by different conservation organisations with their mentorship, to get that model working in loads of different areas. So zoos have supported Lion Guardians for quite a long time. There are lots of other organisations as well. Lion Landscapes is quite a big one. And then on the other end of the scale, you've got the charity that I'm a part of, which is the Safina Lion Conservation Fund. And we work with smaller zoos, really. So, smaller zoos can give us, the amount that they can afford, the amount that they've raised. And we kind of pop it all together in one big pot with other donations so we can use it for a bigger project like a GPS collar, or we sponsor the salary of a lion guardian. So, it makes that £200-300 that the smaller zoos can raise, which is, still very good, but it puts it into a bigger project, which I think it puts it into something more tangible, which I think, is what people want, now.
Definitely. And then in terms of figures then, so what kind of costs would we look at for a GPS collar or, for example, a salary for a lion guardian?
So the GPS collars are around 2,500 to 3,000 each. They're a pretty expensive piece of kit to trust a lion with, really. The lion guardian sponsorships and stuff like that, it's about $1,500 US dollars a year. That might not sound like a lot, but that's not their only job. They keep livestock of their own. They have the traditional Maasai and other tribal ways of income and living. This is kind of a side job, really. Sure. So that isn't all the money that they get, but that's about what it works out as.
I think, and yeah, it's very important to share those kind of values so that people do understand what
Yes.
they're contributing to, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
Always nice where possible. It's not always possible to put a value on things.
No.
But yeah, I think it is definitely very helpful where possible to share those kind of numbers.
Yeah, no, we always try and be as honest as we possibly can. And there's definitely a growing trend to be upfront and to share as much and to be as transparent as you can. Not that there's not things you necessarily don't want to share, but I think a lot of the time people assume no one wanted to know about it, but actually now people are getting more interested in the figures and the kind of nitty-gritty detail, which everyone should be quite proud of, really.
Yeah, definitely. So we've discussed a few kind of different conservation organisations. What are the threats to African lions, and where are they really coming from?
So most of it is habitat-based, habitat fragmentation. Lion populations are being cut off from one another. And if you look at somewhere like Kenya or Tanzania, you've got these national parks spread over these countries, but they're not connected anymore. So the threat from inbreeding, for example, the lions in the Ngorongoro crater have been, they've suffered a severe genetic bottleneck from the 1960s. They lost lions due to a big epidemic. I think they got down to under 10, and they didn't have many lions come into that area for about 50 years. So they've been quite a good study in terms of the effect of inbreeding, and I think they've lost several They've had a few more cases of epidemics that the lions from canine distemper, that that has shown that they might be more susceptible. Their immunity might not be quite up to scratch. You've also got issues from that fragmentation of what's causing it, which is generally land development, livestock, agriculture, and it's where you have two worlds colliding, really. Lions are an incredibly social species, as we know, which makes them very complex, and they require a lot of space for that social system. So when you've got lions, particularly the younger males, trying to get out of the areas where the big dominant males are, they're going into community areas, they're attacking livestock because there's not much prey available in those places, and they're facing retaliation from the local community. So that is probably the main threat, which isn't, it's not very, I think loads of people like to think, things like poaching and trophy hunting, poaching for lions, it's not a massive, it's not a massive problem in terms of the kind of scale, and trophy hunting as well. If it's managed properly, isn't a massive kind of doesn't have a massive detrimental effect if it's managed properly. And there's a big argument going on at the moment with the banning trophy hunting. I don't know if you've seen it. It's gone through to the House of Lords now. And you've got people saying, we should ban trophy hunting because it's wrong, it's having a wrong effect. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to shoot anything. I don't want to hunt anything. But unfortunately, the way land is broken up in those hunting concessions, which are huge areas, if they weren't used for hunting, the likelihood is they'd be taken up for farmland. So it's such a complicated, balance to try and make. But no, definitely habitat fragmentation is a huge problem.
Yeah, I think I am aware of the kind of general consensus surrounding trophy hunting. I use it a lot with my talks about giraffe at the moment as well because of similar issues. I think that the kind of the issue at the moment is that it's considered a necessary evil. Like you say, no truly minded animal advocate wants to see those animals getting shot.
No.
But until such a time other efforts are bringing in the same kind of finances to prevent the land from being fragmented and made smaller, nothing's going to change. And that is the bigger issue at the moment. So it's great to hear. I didn't know it had gone to the House of Lords. So yeah, it's great to hear that that's the level we're at now.
Yes. No, I think, if conservation, the more you look at it, the more complicated it is. And that's where the kind of emotional, moral issues make it even more complex than it is already. If it didn't need to be any more complex than it already is. So I think it's good to debate things. It's good to have different opinions on things. And I think no right-minded conservationist wants animals to die for absolutely no reason at all. I certainly don't. But I think you need to look at all options available. And I'm certainly not advocating trophy hunting at all. But I think looking at the bigger picture, and if those areas are going to be turned into places where wildlife cannot thrive anymore, then I think that needs consideration as well. I mean, if they would be turned into national parks, then fine. But I think the likelihood of that is very, very small.
Yeah, definitely agree. We're not, neither of us and conservation as a whole are definitely not advocating for that kind of end or that route to go down. We are advocating certainly for a change, and we do want that change, but nothing's quick, unfortunately, in this industry, is it? So moving on from that then, so what actions are zoos taken to help support in situ organisations? Obviously, we've mentioned that the Asiatic lion breeding programme is continuing, and we're hoping to get that clear definition on the African species of lions. But what other actions can zoos take to help conserve lions?
I think the most important thing is education. still now, not many people know that lions are in trouble. I know when I was growing up, and tigers are always the big thing. Everyone knew tigers were in danger, and everyone knew that tiger numbers were plummeting. But lions are facing, exactly the same kind of decline, and it's happening underneath people's noses, really. So education is really important, and supporting conservation projects. Zoos, even Biarza zoos alone, send multi-millions of pounds to conservation projects. That is the important bit. That's trying to support these researchers out in the field, the conservationists out in the field. That's the way that we can connect our work with the work that's going on there. And it's not all about money, but it certainly helps in that respect. Money that is being spent well in that regard is incredibly important.
Yeah, and I think it's important for our listeners to know that it is a legal requirement for zoos to donate funding to conservation organisations around the planet. And so while they're doing it because they legally have to, it's not just because they legally have to. The zoos donate those funds because they want to also. Yes, they are aware of how important that is.
Definitely.
So then outside of zoos, how can just everyone get involved with African lion conservation, even if they aren't directly involved with lions?
I think, there's always fundraisers going. There's always and the need to do sponsorship events and stuff. All the work we've done with the Lion Charity, it's come from zoos, but also those zoo keepers and their friends and their families. They've done sponsored walks. We've had keepers from Knowsley and their partners. They did a 3-peak climb. They did Snowdon, Ben Nevis, and what's the other one? I forgot what the third one is. Scarfell Pike, yes.
Right.
They did 3 mountains and they raised actually £2,500 for us.
Oh, amazing.
And even just the little donations of £10 or £5, it all adds up and it all really helps. The one thing we're trying to do at the moment is a Boma campaign. So I went to Tanzania in February with another trustee. We met our friends at Kopi Lion, who we've helped to support, and they showed us some of the bomas that they've been strengthening. So a boma is the place where the cows and goats, all the livestock, go at night to keep them safe. Traditionally, they're made of thorns, but when you've got issues with hungry lions, particularly when prey is scarce, it's an easy barrier for the lions and leopards and hyenas to get through. So just by simple strengthening, it makes a big impact on those farmers and the local communities. So, we're trying to set up a campaign to strengthen 10 bomas at £180 each. We've had a good response so far. Hopefully some zoos are going to get involved, but I think it's important to know that you don't have to. There's no pressure to give hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And sometimes the really important stuff is the on the ground small differences. So this Boma campaign for £180, that's someone's livestock that you're going to protect, and you're going to keep. You're going to help them, and to them, those people, that's going to mean the world to them. So it's important to remember that no matter what you can do, no matter what you can afford, no matter even on just sharing something on Facebook and social media, every little thing does help.
Yeah, I guess so. Going on from that, then obviously the more bomas that get strengthened, the less lions are successfully taking livestock, and then we see less retaliation from the livestock farmers. And retaliation comes in the form of poisoning sometimes, or going out and shooting them, right?
Yeah, or even sparing. I've had a fascinating conversation. One of the people that work with Kopi Lion, he's their lion conflict manager, and he is a local Maasai. He's worked with them for 10 years, and he, as a teenager, would go out and spear lions. And I have to admit, having worked with lions in zoos for 10 years, I have a lot of respect for someone who's going to go up to a lion with a spear. on 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 foot. You know, it's not something that you take lightly or they take lightly. Poisoning is the one that has more of an effect on the ecosystem, because obviously any scavengers, vultures, you know, that it can cause devastation with just one tiny bottle and one carcass. You're talking multiple dead carnivores. So that's the most alarming thing. You know, don't forget, Maasai have been spearing lions for generations. And you know, one every now and then probably hasn't hurt the population much at all. But now the Maasai population is growing, the human population is growing hugely. Lion numbers are dwindling. That is having a bit of an effect now. So it's something that, you know, the conservation organisations want to try and stop as much as they can. And by stopping it, by stopping the need to retaliate, they're helping those people. So, you know, they don't just want to go out and kill a lion for no sake of it, really. Sure. You know, they just want to keep their cattle and their children safe.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I think I might have heard of a project that Lion Landscapes are doing regarding, you know, retaliation from farmers, whereby they're assigning not just lions but wild species with a numerical value, and that gets translated into kind of points for education and medicine at the end of a certain period of time to try and prevent that from happening.
So they're very keen to try and place a benefit on living with large carnivores. So, you know, they're trying to show people that living with them can benefit you. I mean, one of the things that we've supported Lion Landscapes with, we sponsored 2 camera traps. They do a camera trap community project. So instead of just the researchers going out and placing camera traps randomly, they found that some of them were being broken purely because people didn't realize what they were. If you see a strange device and you don't know what it's doing, and you know, you near your house, you know, you might want to get rid of it. So they assign an officer to each village. They give them the camera traps and say, put them around where you think there's animals, and every animal that gets on the camera trap footage, they get a number of points for. So obviously something like a Thompson's gazelle is fairly minimal. A lion or an elephant is quite high, and an African hunting dog is even higher. And then those points get added up. They have like kind of little competitions. Each villages are split into groups of 4, and then the village that gets the most points at the end of that gets, I think it's like $2,000 worth of benefits that could be medical supplies or educational equipment, you know, something like that. Then the second gets 1,500, then 1,000, and 500. And they found that to be very successful, but they've managed to intertwine that with research that they needed to do anyway. So that alone is showing people that there is a benefit. It might be a small benefit, but it is something.
No, it sounds truly inventive, and it almost, you know, it applies to that competitive nature of humans as well, doesn't it? So yeah, it sounds very inventive and very original, and yeah, great. Hopefully something that could be rolled out over a lot of continents for a variety of species. So we've learned a little bit about lions, the work that Safina are doing, and all of the projects that are being supported regarding lions in the wild. So now we'll talk a little bit about your career and how you got to where you are and just your background. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and give us an insight into your background and your journey to where you currently are.
So I've been interested in lions for as long as I can remember. I think since I first saw The Lion King when I was about 3. I've never wanted to work with anything else, and I've never wanted to do anything else. And I used to visit a lot of local zoos. I grew up in an area where there were quite a lot of zoos around, and I started going to Linton Zoo a lot. I got to know the lions quite well. They were hand-reared lions. They were quite friendly, and I used to visit quite regularly. So they would start to recognise me, which was just, when you're 13, 14, it's just amazing. And I kept going throughout my teenage years. I'd volunteer when I used to visit. I didn't do too well in my A levels, so university wasn't really an option for me. But a friend of my dad's who worked with apprenticeships and stuff like that suggested that I looked into something. So I got in touch with the zoo, and they said, "Yeah, we'll take you on if do a work experience placement once you finish school, and if you like it and we like it, then yeah, of course you can. So I had my last A level exam on a Friday, and I started at the zoo and work experience on the following Monday. I passed my driving test 10 days beforehand. And while all my friends were flying off to Magaluf and whatever, having their 18-year-old first trips away, I started work experience at the zoo, which I loved. I did the apprenticeship and then became a trainee keeper. I was there for three years. I then went to Knowsley Safari Park. I worked with the carnivores and the antelopes there. Spent most of my time with the lion pride, and then I moved to Cotswold Wildlife Park where I am now, and I've been there for just over 4 years. The charity is something I started about 6.5 years ago. We did a lot of fundraising at Linton Zoo. We were all encouraged to do a talk. We could choose a charity that we wanted to support and have a donation pot, and we'd have a, as you said, competitive. We'd have a competition between the keepers, see who could raise most amount of money each year, and that's when I first heard about Lion Guardians, because we supported them. And then when I left Linton, joining a big safari park, they did conservation work, but it wasn't as personal for the keepers. That involvement wasn't there then. It's a lot better obviously now, but we had a conservation and research officer who kind of did that, and I wanted to get involved. I wanted to feel that involvement again. So I did about 18 months of digesting every single thing I could find on the Charity Commission website, looked at how easy or hard that it might be to set up a charity. I had kind of one failed attempt, took it back to the drawing board, tried again, and we got our submission approved, and then we haven't looked back since. So that was 2017.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that's very much something that I do completely in my spare time, and probably will keep doing it for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it is, I ask this question to all of my guests because there's no two journeys into this industry that are ever exactly the same. So I think it's obviously to help create that community for people. And to be fair, for me, never really thought about how charities first start. So to hear kind of that you had a failed attempt and that you learned from that, and now 6 years later, doing very well, out in Africa as often as you can be, and supporting multiple projects is just incredible to hear.
No, I'm incredibly pleased. It's gone. We've been more successful than I could have anticipated when we started it. We've been so lucky. We've had some really good, really great zoo managers and keepers get involved and give us their support, which is kind of we're now in a position where we've donated over £20,000 in 6 years. We've just sent off for our 4th GPS collar, and we've sponsored a Lion Guardian for 6 years now, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's great. I can't believe it, really.
No, that's truly fantastic. It really is. And obviously to hear you speak so highly of it and kind of what it means to you, and obviously to see your hard work paying off, must be a good feeling. And not that you're doing it for yourself, but it's very rewarding when you get those little victories or big victories now.
Yeah.
So we talked about how you since watching The Lion King as a wee lad, you fell in love with them. What was one fact about African lions that when you first heard it from someone or read it or experienced it, it was a real wow moment for you?
I think I've always found their social side fascinating, and for watching Big Cat Diary as a kid, I've always loved seeing those big males working together, to try and keep prize. I've always found that fascinating, and I still do. I still find it really interesting now. And I think we've barely touched the surface of it. Really, there's still so much more that we're finding out about these animals all the time, really.
Yeah, it really does set them apart from all other cats. Really, that social aspect, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But also the way that they still have that independent streak as well, which in the zoo environment can be very challenging. But yeah, no, they're in one way they're very typical cat. They're very self-interested. They're very independent, but they're bound by those social ties, which are clearly so important to them. To see it's just brilliant.
Awesome. And do you have any kind of fun or light-hearted stories around your time with lions, be it in a zoo setting or out while you've been in the field?
I think, especially in a safari park environment, I've been outsmarted by lions a few times. We used to have a kind of second vehicle in case we needed it, and it never had the tannoy system. We had to hook up on the front with kind of those like little sucker things on their bonnet. I think every time anyone went in there, one of the lionesses ran off with it. Never get complacent with a group of lionesses. They are on it. And I just love the. I think they're those big male lions as well, and they're even today at work. He's lying on his back, doesn't give a care in the world. And you always hear people going, "Oh, just wants his tummy rubbed," everything like that. And I love how such a big, strong, powerful animal can give off such kind of little cat kind of vibes. That in itself is just bizarre, really. But you do feel it.
Yeah,
You do.
definitely. It's something that draws everyone in.
I think they're so relatable because most people have a cat or have had a cat at home. All the behaviors are exactly the same, and you then relate that into what you're seeing.
Yeah,
Which is
it definitely makes it a
incredibly.
lot more immersive.
Yes, yeah.
So, has there been one individual that you've had a particular attachment to throughout your career? Obviously, you've worked with carnivores and lions throughout various different establishments.
And there's been quite a few. I'd say the top one probably Safina, who's who our charity is named after. She was a lioness. She's still going at Linton Zoo. She'll be 18 at the end of this year. And that she was one of the cubs that I first met with when I went to Linton to go and visit. So for 17 years now, she's been a part of my life. And even now, I left Linton Zoo eight years ago, and I still keep in touch. And I go down, and every time I go home to see my mum and dad, I go to the zoo to go and see the lions as well. And even after all that time, she'll come up to the fence and come to say hello. Which there's no better company. It's just amazing. I can remember the first time when I would volunteer, getting taken over that standoff barrier for the first time, and being able to sit just a few inches away from where there's a lion sat next to you, and just you never forget that. And the presence that they have. I mean, she's an incredibly friendly lion to most people, not everybody, but being that close to them, it's just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
And we should mention, I suppose, really to be turning 18 soon is very, very good for a
Very
lion.
good. Yes, very good. No, she's she's doing slowed up a little bit, but no, she's still just as laid back as ever, really.
Fantastic. She sounds delightful. And not obviously, and this is something that's going to be repeated, I'm sure, throughout multiple guests, but what does a typical day look like for you as a chairman of a charity?
So a lot of it is done as and when I can. Most of the time when I get home, I've got the laptop on. I might be looking at some. It could be making a leaflet or sending an email to one of our conservation partners. I've just this week had to do the annual report and financial accounts as well. I'm very fortunate. One of the trustees, who's an old school friend of mine, is a chartered accountant. So I kind of put all of it together, and he verifies it and double checks it, and he keeps records on them. So I've got some help with that. It's all very wide ranging. We're a very small charity, so we do everything ourselves. I maintain the website on my own, everything like that. I write the annual report, and so could be doing anything, but generally I think about or I do something most days. It's not something I can't really leave it ticking over for that long.
Yeah, fair. Never run a charity, so it all sounds
It's
very
very
taxing,
much
but it sounds
it's what you put into it very much determines what you get out of it. So the more effort you put in talking to people, and also it's very important. I always make sure that all of our supporters, they get regular updates, they get regular emails and pictures, because they're more likely then to help us again. And the amount of effort that you put in, particularly in the annual report and stuff. We've had a few people contact us because all of our information legally, our annual report and our finances, go on the Charity Commission website, and people can search on it. They always stress that, please put as much detail as you possibly can, because if people are looking at it and they get an annual report which is basically blank apart from the numbers, they're very unlikely to want to help you, because they don't know what you do. And so I always try and put as much detail in as I can for that reason. And just to make sure that everyone feels included, everyone feels with being transparent. And because I think if people are interested, they'll hopefully find the detail just as interesting as I do.
yeah, definitely. So what would there be one bit of advice you would give, say, if any of our listeners were thinking about setting up a charity, or now off at the back of this episode, but that's something that I never really considered, or that, didn't know that I could do that kind of thing. What would one bit of advice?
I'd say do your research. The Charity Commission website has got templates on there. So our charity is bound by a governing document. It's about 10 pages of legal jargon. But the templates the Charity Commission have up have every single bit annotated, telling you what it means, telling you what you need to put, what you need to do. Have you read this? You need to read that. So it's very much a kind of do-it-yourself guide. And I would say do your research. Don't let anything kind of make you think you can't do it. I didn't go to university. I haven't studied conservation. I'm a complete amateur really, and everything that I've learned is from people that I've met, from the research that I've done, from the talks that I've been to. So I'm very open-minded into who we support and how we help, and any bit of information that I learn. So certainly don't let anything stop you. If you're passionate and you think you understand, what you need to do, then go for it. Find a group of like-minded people who might be able to help you out. Again, think different generations as well. Some older friends, or even a parent or something like that might have some good knowledge that you can tag in there. So yeah, just think about it, keep thinking, keep pushing that, and try and get a system that you can work and get it moving.
Fantastic words. And so have there been any influences on you or your career path?
I think, especially growing up, I said Big Cat Diary. Jonathan Scott from Big Cat Diary has always been really looked up to him. And I know they say you should never meet your heroes, but I've met him a couple of times at book signings, and he is actually really nice, which in itself is really nice. Go from books kind of reading as a kid, George Adamson is definitely up there, absolutely fascinating bloke. But also when I was volunteering, the zookeepers that I would assist at Linton Zoo and my old boss, those people have always been so encouraging and so helpful. They've definitely made a big influence on me in terms of my passion for conservation, which in itself is completely zoo born. I went to zoos, I went to visit zoos, I spoke to zookeepers and who themselves were interested in conservation, and that's kind of kept going in me. So
Amazing. And it's obviously something that is, again, personal to each individual. But yeah, it's just nice to hear what kind of support system that others who are just starting their careers or even are not in their career yet, but those support systems that would be available as and when they get to that point.
Yeah. No, you just got to try and involve as many people as you can. Try and get as much advice as you can. As we said right at the start, different opinions are very important. Some things, some things that you might think is a great idea actually might not work in practice, and it's nice to have someone to tell you that before you take it a bit further. So just be as open-minded, and don't let anything stop you.
Flip side of that, then, have there been any particular hurdles for you that you've faced up until now?
I mean, I think particularly with zookeeping, as you know, that can you have good days and bad days. In terms of you get to know the animals really, really well. It can be quite upsetting when things go wrong. With the charity, I know when you were starting the process of contacting banks and trying to get signatures from accountants to prove that you're stamping things to do you're doing the right thing. That was quite stressful. That was quite a big hurdle. But again, you just got to think things through. Be realistic. If you can do it, you've just got to find someone that will help you to do it. It's just kind of take a step back and breathe, really. But no, I think with regards to the charity and the conservation stuff, definitely it's a lot more good than bad. The only hurdles are, it's one more challenge is like, we sponsored a GPS collar, the first lion that we sponsored. He passed away after 2 years of wearing a collar. He passed away due to conflict with other lions. And that itself, when we heard the news, we were all gutted. But you remember, these are wild animals. These they might be giving you great information and great data, and it's great to see the pictures, and because their movements are being recorded, they can let the local communities know where they are. So by knowing where the lions are, they can lock the cows up if they're coming close. And getting all that information was absolutely brilliant. It was, you really felt really involved. When we heard that he died, we were gutted about it. But again, they're wild animals. It's things that happen. And then the second collar that we sponsored, within 9 months, the battery stopped working, which was quite frustrating. But again, it's one of these things. The technology is never 100%, and it's not to anyone's fault at all. But we've kept working with the organisation. We're raising money now to help other ways and stuff like that. So just take every opportunity as it comes. If something doesn't quite work, that doesn't matter. It's no one's fault. Might not go exactly to plan. In an ideal world, we'd want all the collars to reach their absolutely maximum lifespan. We'd want absolutely nothing to happen to the lions. We'd want to get fundraising as soon as we put out the first campaign, but that's never going to happen. So yeah, it's just being patient.
Absolutely. Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day.
No,
Kind
certainly
of
not.
mentality, isn't it?
Yeah.
So lastly, before we move on to a little quick fire round of questions, are there any stereotypes or bits of misinformation that you hear as a keeper of lions while you're working that you hear quite commonly?
Yes. The one that really grates on me is, the males being the leader of the pride, and that, one male to every pride. That's completely wrong. Unfortunately, it's the Lion King to blame a lot for that, really. Not many people realize that male lions live in coalitions, that they're not very lazy. They're warriors. They're working away from that pride most of the time. If they don't die of injuries, they die of starvation. They have an incredibly tough life, and unfortunately for most people, the way it's kind of shown in quite lazy fashion, everyone thinks they sleep a lot, and they do. But no, I think that to say, particularly educationally, there's always everyone wants to simplify things. They want to make things as simple as they can, and it's easy to say, oh, there's one average pride, one male, three females. That it's more complicated than that, and I think we should give them a bit more justice to that. Those coalitions that males form are absolutely fascinating. A vast number of them. I think there was a study, one of the famous studies, the Serengeti lion. Within that population, half of those coalitions were made up of unrelated males. They bumped into each other, similar age, similar size, and they teamed up. What kind of large carnivore cat does that? It's two big male animals clubbing together, but it's the numbers that are important. And the fact they have that intelligence to know, if I tag up with this guy, that might help me when I come to take over Pride. And that's fascinating. I think you shouldn't be afraid to talk to people a little bit more in detail rather than try and make things all nice and simple and easy to understand, when a little bit of detail goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like say, in the modern era, it is so much more common to be able to find people to get those little details in.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
And even when places, castrate lions, and you end up, they're huge, huge, huge lions, with no manes. I love it when people explain that, because kids can look and they can tell that's different.
yeah.
And you don't have to give a thorough explanation, even if you just say that's a male, that's a boy, he hasn't got a mane. That's brilliant. Tell that, because they even even little kids can look at a castrate male lion and know that's different to that lioness there. And to say, oh, it's just a lioness, which I think is something that happened if you definitely, when you go back a few years, I think that's quite lazy, really.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so yeah, thank you for kind of clearing that up. As I said, we're gonna have a little quick fire round before we finish up now, and this is just a fun bit, nothing too serious, just to
Yeah.
finish on a little fun, positive note. And so we're gonna start off with 1 to 5 dream species that you would love to see in the wild.
I mean, I've seen lions before. I'm very lucky to see lions and leopards as well. Seeing them has been brilliant. I would love to see jaguars in the wild. I think that would be that's absolutely marvelous. I would love to see some small cats as well. Every time I've been to Kenya twice and to Tanzania once, and each trip I've been desperate to see a caracal or a serval, or they're not necessarily that endangered, but you very, very rarely see them, yet they're out there in the long grass somewhere. So I'd love to see some small cats. I guess, especially having worked with them at the wildlife park here, I'd love to see clouded leopards. But again, that's kind of not too realistic, really. But
You can hope, and yeah, there's obviously again nothing to stop you from chasing your
No.
dreams in that sense, is there?
No.
I think I might know the answer to this one, but you might shock me. So one country or continent that you'd love to call home.
Yeah, it would be Africa. I'd love to go and visit more of the countries there. Kenya being the first place that I visited. I'm treated very well by everyone who I stayed with when I've been there. Same in Tanzania. I don't think I would ever be able to make the full move. I would think 3 month, 6 month, or something like that would be okay. But whether or not I could live out there fully, I'm not 100% sure.
No, that's fair. Yeah, absolutely valid point. But yeah, it clearly holds a special place in your heart, and it's just nice to hear about. If there was one species from around the world that could be native to the UK then, but have no negative effects on the ecosystem, what would it be?
Oh, well, I'm gonna have to put lion, aren't I? But no, I guess I would love to. I've been to a few debates and talks about things like lynxes coming into the UK, and the consensus of the people who I listened to was we would love to, but we don't think it would work. And I guess I would love to see lynx in this country. Whether or not I think it would work, I don't. I don't. I think the development of the landscape is too far gone, in my opinion. I think there's too many people about, and there's. Yeah, I don't think at the moment we're ready for something like that. So yeah, if in a dream world, I'd love to have something like Lynx. I think the Scottish Wildcat project at the minute is really interesting. That's very good. So yeah.
Yeah, great little native species plug there. No, I absolutely appreciate that. It's one thing to talk about conserving animals in these far off lands, but to a certain extent, conservation does start at home.
Oh,
And
100%. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
um, if you could be an animal, what would it be?
Oh, I
And
don't know.
why?
I, I don't think I have the complete lion qualities really. They are no, I don't think I've quite got that kind of bullish um kind of bravado as the big male lions have got. I must admit I quite envy birds being able to fly around wherever they want to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. When I guess suppose when you're out in Kenya, do you have a particular food that you enjoy most while you're out there?
um I mean, I must admit, most of the food you have out there, kind of the traditional food is very much rice and beans. Which when you're out there for a couple of weeks, you do get a bit bored of rice and beans. Um, I must admit, I quite like home food. Nothing better than a good steak and chips, really. I can see your face nodding there.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate good steak and chips too. And so when you're not conserving African lions or having a lot of your time taken up with Savina, what do you do? How do you keep busy?
um, I must admit, the charity does take up a massive portion of my spare time. I outside of work and outside of zookeeping, I like going to visit other zoos. I like going outside. Me and my partner have just got a National Trust membership,
Incredible.
and also I quite like music. I'm actually a member of a brass band, which I've was taught by my dad as a young kid. And that actually last night we had dream night at the wildlife park, and there's hundreds of terminally ill and disabled children get to come to the zoo for free, and we do different activities. And I got the brass band to come and play. So
Fantastic.
that was quite a weird mix of two different worlds colliding, but yeah.
No, it's nice to hear about kind of what little vices or little hobbies
Yes,
that allow you to escape
I
from
think it is.
animals.
Yeah,
Because as
I think
much as we
I
love them, that work-life balance is
yes,
also
no,
very important.
I'm definitely very guilty of just being transmit on lions probably all the time, which I know for my partner can be slightly grating sometimes. I think yeah, quite often she'd like me to talk about something else. Um, yeah, I think you do appreciate the other things you do when you're doing them and you're taking that little step back. Um, which at the time might be quite hard to do, but you definitely do. You do uh, appreciate taking the pressure off yourself a bit.
So, James, before we head off, then, have you got any last messages or positive notes that you want to share with our listeners?
No, I think being optimistic is really important. I think as we've already spoken about, it's quite easy to be getting to like doom and gloom, about how the state of animal numbers in the wild and so on. But I think it's really important to remember that there are good things going on. There are things that you can do, and I've been really fortunate to do the charity work, to see it progress, to see us support 4 different conservation organisations. I've been out to see Kopi Lion and the Mara Predator Conservation Programme, see the work that they do, and there's a lot of good things going on. There's a lot of people that want to get involved. There's a lot of communities that are happy to work with them. So I think being positive is really important, because if you don't believe in what you're trying to do is achievable, you'll never achieve it. So got to keep positive, and we're all working for the same thing. We've all got to, and if we do it with a smile on our faces, that, in my opinion, that can only help, really.
Absolutely, yeah. We're all, like I say, all in it together, and it's incredibly motivating when you see those successes and keep them in the back of your head for the days where things seem a little bit slow or an uphill battle.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's just something you've got to keep working on, and there is, especially in the news, and you hear, there's the statistics you hear of how many animals go extinct on a daily basis. It is quite easy to get quite wound up about that, I guess, but you've got to just think, what little bits are you doing, and if you're making a good impact on something, regardless how big or small that might be, then that's something to be pleased about.
Fantastic words. Well, thank you for appearing on the podcast. Just before I let you go, where can our listeners keep up to date with the latest work that Safina are achieving?
So we have a website, safinalionconservation.org. The Facebook page is quite active. We'll post most things on there before it goes onto the website. At the moment, our big thing we're spearheading, as already said, is the Boma campaign. So if people want to get involved, it's £180 to strengthen a Boma. If you can do that with a fundraiser or a collection with staff, anything like that, we've got people thinking of doing like a small music event. One of my trustees, the other trustees, he'd organised a party, the street party for the coronation, and he had a hot sauce challenge, which he was doing to try and raise money. So you could be as inventive as you can. Also, one more thing people can do to get involved is we have a lion keepers resource group for zookeepers. We've got stuff on there about husbandry, about enclosure designs, managing lions in different scenarios, in enrichment and diet sheets. So if people want to get involved, they can email the charity, which is info@safinalionconservation.org. I can pass on the password. Contact your senior manager at your collection if you want to share stuff. We always promote that. Ask permission before you do, and we'd love to grow a colour community out of that as well. So we want to give something back to the community that's helped us, over the last 6 years.
That all sounds great. But James, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and learn a lot about lions, both in situ and ex situ. So thank you for your time. And we'll be keeping a close eye on everything that Safina are doing. And hopefully we'll chat to you again in the future.
Thank you, Johnny. That's much appreciated. Thank you for having me on. And thank you for dealing with my ramblings.
No, it's been great to listen to you. Cheers, James.
Thank you very much.
And there you have it. Thank you so much to James for appearing on the podcast. Be sure to follow the work of Safina Lion Conservation Fund on Facebook, and if you're ever in the area, do pop into the Cotswolds Wildlife Park. It is one of my favourite collections in the UK and certainly one of the most scenic. And who knows, maybe you'll see James around. If you do, be sure to give him a wave. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Conservationists Assembled podcast. Please follow on Instagram and at Conservationists Assembled Pod. I'd also appreciate if you could subscribe and give a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts, and share it with the family, friends and colleagues. This will help get the word out and support the Conservationists Assembled community. There is a lot more great conservation based content yet to come. Most importantly, thank you for listening, and be sure to listen out for our next episode coming soon.